Good morning. Starting a little late today because I got sidetracked doing some chores around the house. Looked at the time and realized I was a little behind. So, hello, and today's topic is going to be compromise. The reason for this is because part of being in a relationship with somebody, especially when you're in marriage with somebody, this comes up a lot. It was also the topic of one of the TV shows that I watched recently, and a lot of things in your life. So compromise is really important when it comes to relationships of all kind, but it can be even more so with long-term relationships. So that could be family, that could be your partner that you choose to be with, it can be with kids, it can be with anybody with whom your relationship is going to last for long periods of time. Now, this is with the understanding that compromise doesn't mean always giving in, and it doesn't mean that you never get to have anything your way. It means that with something that you have a very differing opinion with somebody else, you kind of talk through it and you compromise. Maybe you don't go the full way you wanted to, maybe it's part your way, part their way, and sometimes compromising does mean your way is better, but that's not always the case. So this comes up a lot in a lot of different factors in life, and has been coming up recently with me and my husband just because there's a lot of stuff that we're doing right now. So, like we spoke on yesterday on the video, we're thinking about buying a house, we're thinking about having kids, and all of the things that are coming next in our life. And sometimes the compromise means that we don't get all the things that individually we want. So when we were talking finances, we realized that we have a lot of different things that we would like to pay down. We have a couple car loans. We have, I developed credit card debt while I was in college, and working on paying that down between not having jobs and being on my own and things like that. I just ran it up a little bit. So we're talking about wanting to get a lot of that paid down so that way hopefully we don't have to compromise on the house that we want. So we don't want to pick a house that we're not happy with because we can't afford a bigger loan, or we can't afford to do that right now. So part of that is paying it down. Now, he's not too happy about having to wait because he feels like we need to do everything now, or he feels like he's failing because he's not able to do everything immediately. And that's not true, and I've told him that everything takes time, and it's okay to wait. Now, what comes along with that is that means that we're staying in this house longer than we originally thought. And part of that was because we didn't really sit down and consider all of the finance and all the little things. It was just, okay, well, next year we'll work on a house and we'll do that. And so it's been pushed back a little bit. And if something changes, maybe we will have the house next year. But for right now, that just means that we're here longer. And part of me being okay with that is I wanted to do changes. However, we currently own a duplex, and that means that one side is being rented out, and eventually we would like to keep this house so that we can continue to rent both sides out when we move out. What comes along with that means that I can't change the house all the way I want. So growing up, you can ask my parents, I painted my room constantly. It used to be a lavender color, and then it went to lavender with dark blue drips coming down, and like a checkered board on one corner, and painted this night sky on the ceiling and put all these glow-in-the-dark stars. And then a few years later, I painted it all a really nice like rose color, and it was just constant change. I was always painting, I was always doing something. Right now there's a wall that I still need to finish of trees that I was painting, and they look really nice. But I was constantly personalizing my space. I was painting, I was decorating, I was moving furniture all the time. And I did that at my apartment too. I was constantly, okay, well, the bed's here, now I want to move it over here. I want to do this, and I want to do that. And I was always moving stuff and personalizing my space. We had to compromise on that because if we would like to rent out the space, I can't personalize it to the extent that I want. Because when you rent something out, a lot of the times it looks really generic. If you think about all of the apartments that you've ever lived in or live in, you don't walk into colorfully painted walls. A lot of the time you walk into white walls because when you move out and they have to do a make ready, which is when they get it ready for the next person, they will cover up any holes that you might have left, and they'll have to paint over it if it needs a new coat of paint, whether because you scuffed it or because you marked it up with something, or if you have kids and they write it on the walls, things happen. they need to be able to touch it up. And white is just the easiest thing to go with because you can walk into the store, you don't have to paint match, grab a gallon, and you start going. And a lot of people is what they do. And that's what we do when we prepare the other side when we recently had tenants move in. And so when we rent out this side, when we move out, it's going to be easier not to have to repaint everything that I've already painted. This was a little bit difficult for me because I want to make the space my own, and that's just one of the ways that I do it. I had to compromise because he made a lot of valid points. It is going to be a lot harder for us to make this space ready while simultaneously packing and simultaneously fixing any holes that we put in the wall and moving into the new house and making sure that's all ready to go and covering up anything we need to over there. And there's already so much going on that going back to paint all the walls white again, or getting something that will kill whatever color I put on the wall, because if I put a bright red, let's face it, I can't just put white on top, it'll turn out pink, or you'll see all of the red streaks and it'll look like a murder house, which I would really love to paint the living room red, but we're not going there. So he made all of these valid points that if we want to rent out this side, we're going to have to limit how much personalizing we do. And my mom brought this up the other day. Don't personalize it too much, especially if you plan to rent it out. So as much as I would love to go and add color all over the place, it's something that I can't do. And since I'm not working and we are still trying to get our finances back in order, it means that I can't just go buy a whole bunch of new stuff to personalize as well, which means that I have to make do with what I have and limit what we want to buy. So there's certain things that we still needed to do because it was improvements that needed to happen. Maybe like we had to replace the washer a few months ago because it was leaking, it wasn't working, it was making this really weird grinding noise and it smelled like smoke, and it just turned out something wasn't running right, or you're gonna have to ask him, I don't remember exactly what was wrong with it, but it definitely needed replacing. And we wanted to replace the stove because one of the burners isn't working, and we've had to kind of tweak it to make it all work right. And even now, one of them won't quite heat up correctly, but it runs fine. So we had to figure out and prioritize that we had to replace the washer first, and I would like to eventually replace the stove, and we will eventually have to if we're going to rent it out with a stove in there, which most places do. So we'll have to do that. So that's a priority, which means that the money that is going to go to that can't go to buying new furniture, buying paint, buying frames, buying all of these things that I can use to decorate. So that limits all of that. It's not a bad thing, it's just, it's not exactly what I wanted because we had to compromise. Another example of this is growing up, I have two sisters, and we all love to play video games, and we like to watch TV, and Mom limited it, so we had to figure out what to do. So if we had an hour of TV time where we're watching something, we had to figure out what we were going to watch as a group. Now, this didn't always work out in everyone's favor, and I still always feel bad thinking about it, because my youngest sister loved to watch Blue's Clues when she was little, and would intentionally wake up before the rest of us to go and try to watch it, because me and my other sister are a little older, and we just didn't want to watch it. We wanted to watch something else, and we would outvote her. And I still feel bad about it, and I'm really sorry, but that was something that we had to figure out together. We had to figure out how to compromise, how to figure stuff out, and sometimes she would get to watch it with us, because I do remember watching it with her, but it wasn't always. And we had to learn how to get along, and when we started playing video games, we had to compromise on who got to play first and what game we were playing, and oh, well, it's my turn to do that, and oh, but that's my controller, and all of the things that siblings go through. We had to learn to compromise on some of this. And as we got older, it got a little easier because we're constantly practicing it. It got to the point that me and my other sister were really competitive as to who was going to finish a game first, but if one of us was playing our hour or our 30 minutes or whatever time we had, and their time ran out, and they were in the middle of something. So if you're a gamer, you know if you're in the middle of a boss battle, you can't pause, save, and start again later. You're going to start from the beginning, and that is hard and sucks because you've done all this progress, especially when you're halfway through. And if you ever played a Legend of Zelda game, there's stages when you're beating them. So you go through the first stage, and then there's this big dramatic scene, and then the boss changes and has a different skill, and you have to do something else to beat it. And it's usually hard, and then you have to figure out how to do the next one, figure out how to do the next one. It's a puzzle to figure out and to defeat them. So if you're in the second phase or going on to the third phase and your time runs out, what do? Well, the rule is you have to stop and the next person's time start because your time ran out. Well, we learn to compromise together by, okay, you know what? It's my turn next. I will start my time and you can use it to finish. And as soon as you're finished, you'll save and I'll start. And we compromised on that. We had a little give and take where I gave her some of my time or she gave me some of her time so that we would finish. Partly a little selfish because that meant that I didn't have to figure out how to figure out how to beat the boss in that level because she already done it and I already knew how to do it, and that made it easier when I did it. And vice versa. If I was doing it, it made it easier on her because I had already figured out how to do it. But we had to develop that skill on how to compromise with each other, and it helped our relationship later, so that when we got older, it was a little bit easier to figure out some give and take. Same thing happens with our parents. When we are living with them, there's a lot of compromise that starts happening when you're growing up, because you're still living in their house when you get older, but at the same time, you're also becoming an adult and you have to figure out. And if you're just going to spend the whole time yelling at them, saying, well, I'm an adult, I'm going to do what I want, well, it's my house, nothing ever gets done. Nothing ever gets figured out. Everyone just ends up upset, and nobody gets what they want. You have to grow up and learn how to compromise. You have to say, look, these are the things that I want to do. When I was in college, I was still living at home for the first few years, and I was doing plays, which rehearsals run late. And if you're in that department now, good luck. It's a lot of work, and sometimes it goes late to like 10 or 11, and then everybody wants to go out to eat. And that's really difficult to do because my parents, like especially my dad, didn't usually go to sleep until I got home. So instead of staying out as late as I could, I would come home as soon as rehearsals were done, because I knew he was staying up late and he'd already let me stay out that long and without calling or worrying, which I'm sure he still worried anyway, but come home early so then he could get some sleep and know that I was okay. It was really hard and it wasn't what I wanted, but I had to understand and respect that they had limits and they had rules and they had things that I couldn't just get away with, because it was still their house, it was still their car, and at the end of the day, I'm still their kid. They're still going to worry about me. So I had to figure out how to take them into consideration. I didn't have to, but I wanted to, because they're already giving so much. They're letting me go and figure out how to be an adult and how to stay out and how to be responsible, that I need to give a little too. When you have friends and you're trying to figure out where to go and what to do, you have to learn to compromise with them, because everybody has things that they want to do. Everybody has things that they want to go see, or people they want to hang out with, or go new things that they want to try, and sometimes it requires compromise. When you're going to figure out, okay, well, we're all going to go on an adventure and we're going to go to the zoo or the park or go watch a movie, you have to work together to figure out what you're going to do together, whose car you're going to take, which vehicle, which movie theater. My sisters had to figure, my youngest sister, her friends are all over the area, the Rio Grande Valley, somebody's in, now we've got Donna, we've got somewhere between Elsa and Edinburgh, right along the road, I think it's technically still Edinburgh, and then somebody's in La Feria. So we gotta have to figure out, okay, whose car are we taking? Are we meeting in the middle? Are we gonna, if we're going to McAllen, we can drive by Edinburgh and we can pick up, or we can swap cars and we can keep going, so that way we're saving gas, saving money, and figuring out how to make that work. When I'm going to the valley, if one of our friends who's in San Marcos wants to go with us, I can go pick her up, or she can meet me at my place and we can keep going. There's a lot of things that we can do to compromise and figure things out, make it easier for each other. Because I'm sure everybody loves that feeling of being the driver in the car. I get to control where we're going and control what speed and figure all of this out. And for me, it's a lot more relaxing. But there's compromise. When I went down for my bachelorette party, I had to let go of being the driver of the car, because it made more sense for someone else to drive, because they had a bigger vehicle, and we had all fit and we had all of the stuff in there, and there was a lot of us that were going, and it made more sense for her to drive. I really don't like giving up driving. But there's compromise in life. You have to let it go and allow other people to take charge sometimes, and allow other people's decisions and group decisions to be what gets done. Compromise is a part of life, all parts of it. When you're working, sometimes there's compromise and give and take, but you have to be open to it. You have to be open to talking about it and figuring out what's the best decision, because you might come in here and say, this idea is the best idea and everybody's going to do it and it's going to be what's easiest. And then you talk to somebody else and they have a better idea, or they have a better aspect to your idea. And so you have to pick and choose and it's like putting together a puzzle. Not everything is going to be perfect. You have to figure out, okay, well, this piece fits better and this piece fits better. And it's not always easy to figure out. Puzzles aren't even that easy to figure out, and they're got a very specific way they're supposed to go together. But you have to talk and communicate and figure out what's best, because then things start to fall apart. If your friends never get to choose where you go and you're always choosing, they're going to start going places without you, because they still have things that they want to do and they still can. Your significant other still wants to have an opinion on your home or the cars or clothing ideas and all of this stuff. They want to have an opinion. They want to have a say. And that makes it really difficult to be in a relationship if they never get to make a decision. If I'm always choosing where we're going, he never gets to eat where he wants. Or if he's always choosing, which car we're going in, I can feel left out. There's a lot of different things that can happen when you refuse to compromise. And it deteriorates relationships. I've heard a lot of parents and kids that are arguing that, well, they're always doing this, or they never let me do this, or they're always complaining that I never let them have their way. And a lot of the times it's just, did you sit down and understand their side? Did you try to figure out a compromise? If they want you to be home by a certain time, did you at least talk to them about why you can't? Whether that's for rehearsals or because you just never get to go out with your friends and you would like to every now and then. A lot of the times, the people who are having these arguments are going to understand. Your parents were young and they understand that, yeah, you want to stay out and go with friends, but they also know that, like my parents, they don't mean to be overbearing that way, but they can't sleep because they worry. And I understand it's scary to let people out into the world. I'm scared to go out sometimes too. But they also understood that I needed to go out and experience life and figure things out, so we compromised. And I didn't always stay out late, but the biggest thing was they wanted to know where I was and when I'd be coming home. That's not a lot to ask when you're going out. So I would tell them, hey, this is where I'm going to be, or hey, the movie's running late, or they decided that they were going to go here and I'd kind of like to go this time. And that open communication to let them know, it also gives them a chance to say, I would really like you to be home because there's something important going on tomorrow. And I can say, okay, well, let's figure out a decision. I can either go and not stay the whole time, or I just go home. And giving up sometimes is hard, because it's so much easier just to always try to do your way. Well, I want to do this, and I want this, and this is going to make me so much happier. But in the long run, it eats away at your relationships. And it makes it harder, and it makes people want to argue and put their foot down and say, no, you have to do it my way. And this is the consequences of that. Maybe my parents would have stopped letting me use the car, and that would have made it really hard to go to college. Or maybe they would have said they had to drop me off. There are a lot of things that can become a result of that. And a lot of times we feel like, oh, well, it's because they're being controlling. It's like, no, it's because they care, or they have things that they need done too. When I would go out, sometimes my parents would say, can you please take your sister, because she wants to go out and you're going to the same area, and it just makes more sense for you to drive with them, drop them off and pick them up. It's not a lot to ask, but it can feel like a lot if you don't want to compromise, if you don't want to talk about it. It can be really hard to think about all the things that I would love to do with this house, but I can't. And I have to be okay with that, because it's reasonable. It's not like he loves white walls. It's because we're trying to think ahead and make life easier for us in the long run. So for now, I gotta settle with, this is the furniture we have. How do we make it look nicer? How do we make it work? And that's kind of the beauty of a relationship, is you get to figure out what works and what doesn't. And the house really does look good. And we still get to put stuff up. We're remodeling the kitchen because the cabinets were terrible and the hinges were broken and not working and they needed desperate replacement. So we agreed to paint the cabinets as well. It's not a very big bright color, but they're gray and it really is making the place look nicer. So we're fixing things and we're personalizing a little bit and we're compromising. And it makes things easier. If somebody gives a little, maybe they get a little later. And it is making us better communicators and is making our relationship a lot better. So the next time you're coming up with a decision, think about that, okay? What's going to be the give and take? If it's good decision or bad decision, and now I have to go calm some cats because they're fighting, but something to think about. Thanks for listening.